Welcome to another edition of our Engineering Masterclass Fireside Chat. You know, nobody today can afford to have a large-scale cyber attack. The financial damages aside, think about downtime, theft, or loss of reputation. Love it or hate it, cybersecurity has to be an integral part of any product or service we roll out today. And you know, while all of us have some basic familiarity with cybersecurity, we have someone very special with us today who's going to talk about things that we don't know about cybersecurity, on how attacks really work, and why, when you cut to the chase, cybersecurity is essentially our personal responsibility. Dr. Eric Cole has 30 years of experience in network security. He's designed security systems for Fortune 500 companies, for top international banks, and even being a professional hacker with the CIA. So Eric, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's such an honor.
It is my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Great. So Eric, tell us, while all of us believe we have a 101 understanding of cybersecurity, what are some of the things that we may not know about security? And what are the things that we need to keep in mind when designing a security system?
The first thing that many people don't realize when it comes to cybersecurity is, in any practical sense, 100% security doesn't exist. The only way to be 100% secure is to turn off and destroy the computer, to have zero functionality. So what many people don't realize is, just like there's laws of gravity and laws in other areas of our life, there are laws of security. And the law of security says this: every time you add functionality, you're decreasing security. Anytime there's a functional system that's providing value at some level, it cannot be 100% secure. There's always going to be vulnerabilities, which means nobody is 100% safe. Any system you have is going to be compromised. It's not a matter of if, but when. So over your lifetime, yourself, your family, and the company you work for is almost a guarantee that there is going to be a compromise. Now, I know when I say that, it scares people and they're like, what's the point? We might as well give up. But let's look at our lives. Nobody is 100% healthy. There's nobody that says they're the perfect specimen of a person and 100% healthy. Everybody over the course of their life is going to get sick. So the goal of health, the reason why you exercise and take supplements, is not to say you're never going to get sick. It's to minimize the frequency and the impact in which it happens. And many people can live long, healthy lives by managing and controlling it. So cybersecurity is not being naive and saying you're 100% secure. It's all about managing the frequency in which it happens and the impact that it has on your life. So some practical things that you can do is recognize any application that you're using, whether it's a business application, whether it's Dropbox, whether it's Microsoft Azure, whether it's e-commerce, Amazon, whether it's a banking account, has security built in, but it's not turned on by default. So you need to go in and turn it on. And to me, some of the basic features, first one is what we call 2FA, or two-factor authentication. Passwords are archaic. We don't go in and push our cars anymore. We have modern cars, right? We went in and we don't use archaic technology. Passwords are archaic. They're just not going to work today. Two-factor authentication is simple. You go to a site, you enter in an initial password or PIN, it texts you a unique password, you enter it and you authenticate. 2 extra seconds, well worth it. Next, you want visibility into your account notification. If anybody goes in and tries to log in or connect to your device, you want to get notification. And also, anytime you're logging in from a new location or new device, you want to get a notification out of band to your cell phone that you explicitly approve. So the thing that I find with cybersecurity is, it's not hard and it's not complicated as soon as people recognize two things. They are a target, and cybersecurity is their responsibility.
Great. So Eric, let's talk a little bit about threats. What are some of the top threats that connected products and the manufacturing ecosystem of today are faced with?
The biggest threats really come down to a different area of security. So when we talk about security, there's three core areas. We call it confidentiality, integrity, availability. And really what that's saying is confidentiality is protecting against unauthorized disclosure of information. Integrity is preventing unauthorized alteration of information. And availability is preventing denial of access. Now, the problem is most security people are trained up on confidentiality, keeping secret, right? Making sure the data is protected, secured, and locked down. However, in manufacturing, if we really look at it, not some of the information is, but a lot of the information that's being stored, processed, and sent is not very confidential, but it must be accurate and available. If you have a manufacturing floor and an adversary is viewing the data going across the networks, it's not really going to cause a big risk. But if they could alter the information, or they could deny access with ransomware or denial of service attacks, that's where it becomes impactful. So it's very important that in manufacturing and control systems that you have security people that have worked and understand that domain. Because if they come in and try to do confidentiality, it's not going to provide the protection we need. So we need to make sure that we're validating the integrity and making sure our systems are available when and where they need it, because the biggest attack vectors are denial of service and ransomware attacks.
Great. So Eric, could you give us some insights into how attacks really work? And you spoke a while earlier about functionality versus security. So how do organizations play that balancing act where, they're creating processes and systems that are keeping their organization protected, but they're not going overboard with so many systems and processes where it affects the efficient functioning of the organization?
So the first part of that question is the way attacks work. And one of the things I like to do is always break things down into manageable components. So I know there's lots of books and lots of method and all these fancy terms out there, but if we really want to get down to the core components, if somebody is going to break in to a manufacturing organization, or really any organization for that matter, there's really four targets. They're going to attack a server that's accessible from the internet. They're going to attack a client that checks email or surfs the web. They're going to compromise an internal resource, or they're going to do a supply chain where they get a vendor that has a system within your environment. So real quickly, servers accessible from the internet. The way this attack works, almost all of the major data breaches have all worked this way. Systems accessible from the internet, missing patches, contain critical data that's not properly encrypted. Easiest way to protect against that is just have a rule. Any systems accessible from the internet must be patched and never contain critical data. And if there are systems that can't have patches, because that's very common in manufacturing, or they have critical data, they cannot be accessible from the internet. You need to put some sort of VPN or interface device in front of that. With clients with phishing, it sounds simple. Don't click on malicious links, don't open attachments, and don't be tricked or manipulated. However, these attackers are so clever that they're going to find a way. So this is a great example where what most companies do with security is disable the user. So they're going to block attachments. They're not going to allow embedded links. They're going to put all these restrictions in place that now make it very, very hard for the user to do their job. What I always like to do is treat cybersecurity as a business enabler. So the way that we do it is we give everyone a separate device. And this could be their current phone, it can be an iPad, but now they do all their work on their Windows computer. They create documents, do all their reports, do all their analysis, but then whenever they check email and surf the web, they use a separate non-Windows based device that contains no critical data. Now we've created a solution that doesn't restrict them, it enables them, but it still balances security and it still balances the functionality. And the insider threat, that one is really more of an HR issue where you need to do background checks, verification, and validation. So I'm not going to really go into that one. But the last one, supply chain, which we just saw with SolarWinds that was announced or finally became public in December of last year. is anytime you're allowing connections from a third party, a vendor, or anyone else, you must always isolate and segment that connection. Now, summarizing that with what you said is, it is a balance. On the one hand, you don't want to have so much security that the functionality is restricted, but you also don't want to have functionality to a point where there's no security. And to me, the trick is this: companies need to determine acceptable level of risk. There's always going to be a risk. What is that acceptable level? And a great example of that is many people will drive automobiles. Every time you get into a car, there is a risk. There is a risk, even if you're the safest driver, that somebody can run a red light or do things they're not supposed to, and you could get into an accident. So there is a risk. However, most people believe that with the safety restrictions on the road, airbags, and seatbelts, that is acceptable. On the other hand, one of the things I do enjoy is extreme sports. So I love base jumping and parachuting and things like that. However, many people don't participate in that because it's much, much higher risk. However, the clarity I get in my mind and the enjoyment I get from doing it, to me, outweighs the risk that I could get hurt, injured, or die. But most people are not willing to do that. So it's the same way with security. You have to determine what is the risk, and it starts by asking a second question. Most businesses only ask one question: what is the value or benefit? And there's always going to be value and benefit. They're always going to do it, and that's why they get breached. But what I want you to do is train everyone in your organization, even non-technical people, to ask a second question. The first question: what is the value and benefit? Second question: what is the risk or exposure? And then the decision is easy. Is the value and benefit worth the risk and exposure? If the value and benefit is worth the risk and exposure, do it. If it's not, don't. But now what's happening is we're making cybersecurity a conscious decision where people are aware and deciding, as opposed to they assume it's secure and they have no visibility into what the real risks or exposures are.
Right. So Eric, let's deep dive a little bit into this. Organizations spend millions and millions of dollars into cybersecurity programs, and yet they get breached all the time. So what are they doing wrong? Are they solving a wrong problem of sorts?
Exactly. They're fixing the wrong problem. And the reason they're doing it is they're getting the equation backwards. The way the equation works is quite simple. Before you spend an hour of your time or $1 of your budget on anything in the name of security, you always ask 3 questions. What is the risk? Is it the highest priority risk? And is your solution the most cost-effective way of reducing it? So the way it's supposed to work is I evaluate my organization and I say, this is the top risk. Once I say this is the top risk, I then look at solutions and say, which of these solutions is the most cost-effective way of reducing it? That's the proper way. However, because of really good sales, marketing, and hype in the industry, the way it normally works is they find a cool product and force it into the organization. On a regular basis, 4 to 5 times a week, I either get a call, an email, or a query on my social media that says, hey, Dr. Cole, what do you think of this new product? And I'm like, okay, what is the risk you're trying to reduce? But Eric, you're missing the point. This product has triple behavioral analytics that actually has advanced AI that can correlate across multiple sources and actually can protect against ATPs, known and unknown. And they read out this list to me. And I'm like, I don't care. What is the risk you're trying to reduce? But Eric, you're missing the point. All of our competitors are using this product. It's recommended. The vendor told us that they are the #1 selling product on the market. Gartner said that they are in their magic quadrant. Yes. What is the problem you're trying to fix? What is the risk, right? So to me, we get so caught up in emotional decision-making, which we could argue whether it's good or bad in our lives. But in cybersecurity, emotional decision-making is the most dangerous thing because it causes you to buy products that you don't understand and you don't know how to use. So that's the first problem. The second problem is if you look at any of the major breaches that have happened, and we go in and look at their security devices that they had, every single case, the security devices, when we know where to look, detected the attack. They absolutely caught the attack. Here's the problem. In that organization, all their security devices were generating 20,000 alerts a day, but their staff could only handle 200. So if you're only responding to 200 out of 20,000 a day, the probability of getting the right ones is slim, but then let's multiply it. That's 40,000 in 2 days. That's 80,000 in 4 days. And so you can see it gets out of hand. So the problem is the technology is not tuned to the response rate, and therefore they miss the important ones. So my point is, if your staff can only handle 200 alerts, then your tech should only generate 200. Now, people always go, but Eric, if you do that, you're gonna miss some attacks. Yes, but today you're missing all of them. So would you rather miss all of them, or would you rather catch the 10% that are the most critical? So to me, it's also that mindset shift that more tech doesn't solve the problem. It often makes it worse if you don't have the staff to respond to the alerts.
So Eric, from a process standpoint, presuming that a breach does occur, as you mentioned earlier, that no software system is foolproof, right? What are the things an organization can do to be able to detect that breach very quickly and to be able to bounce back from it?
So I'm laughing a little because when you said like when an organization gets compromised and breached, what's the first thing you should do? And the reason I'm laughing is if you watch the SolarWinds or follow that, I kid you not, 3 weeks ago, they came out and blamed an intern. So my answer to you is going to be blame the intern. I'm sitting there going, I don't know if that was a good plan. You're a $1 billion company. You have products all around the world, and you have a major breach of your product base, and the best you could come up with is let's blame an intern. I mean, that's just great. I mean, it's like, even if that was true, lie, right? But don't admit to that. So but back to your question, the focus needs to be on detection. But here's the problem today. Most companies are only doing inbound prevention. They're looking at the inbound traffic, trying to prevent. Now, yes, you should prevent some attacks. Prevention is ideal, but you will not be able to prevent all the attacks. So what companies do is they add detection in place, but they're actually looking at the inbound traffic. Inbound traffic is way too noisy. So if I want to catch data exfiltration, if I want to catch command and control channels, if I want to catch external connections to the adversary, does that occur during inbound or outbound? It occurs during outbound. So the real trick that companies need to do is they need to go in and do inbound prevention, which they're probably doing, and outbound detection. Look at the outbound traffic. To me, one of the best ways, and this is how SolarWinds was caught, all outbound connections must be proxied as they leave their organization. You must evaluate, analyze, and look at them. Another really powerful way to detect attacks is do a geolocation plot of the outbound connections. When you're making outbound connections, it's not 100%, but it's pretty accurate. You know where in the world those connections are going to. So I remember I was working with a manufacturing entity that mainly works within the United States. They do a little work in Canada and a little bit in Mexico, but that's about it. So we took all their outbound connections for 6 months, and we plotted them on the map of the world to show where they go. And the thicker the line, the bigger the connection. And for 6 months, they had no clue. 15% of their traffic was going to China, and 17% was going to Russia, and they do no business in those areas. I went in and I found many points of compromise, and all I did was create a visibility chart. So it's not hard to catch the adversary. You just have to look in the right spot, create the right data, and look at the outbound information, and you'll be able to catch attacks very quickly.
Thank you so much for your insights, Eric. This was absolutely fascinating. I think just the very definition of cybersecurity, that it's not about preventing attacks as much as being able to manage them effectively, I think it gives us all a very different perspective on how to design security systems. So thank you so much again for being here with us today.
It's my pleasure.